Huh? I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Let me see if we're live streaming. Hey, it says we're live. So y'all better be good. Okay. All right. Well, wrong glasses. Them is singing glasses, Joe. These is teaching glasses. Woo. Yeah. All right. Well, we have been a few weeks on talking about, what have we been talking about? Different stuff. But it was kind of a lead up to these next few weeks that I want to talk to you about. Sabbath. And I don't know how familiar you are with Sabbath, what Sabbath means, should we keep it, what day is it, what's the purpose of it, all of these matters. And I like it. It's pretty cool. We had to add some extra chairs this morning. That's all right. It won't be long till somebody will be forced to sit beside him, and not even Tracy will sit beside him. Yeah. Yeah, we're just a couple people away, expanding the circle. Yeah. But one of the reasons for doing this, these circles like this, guys, is I want us all to become critical thinkers. You don't know how many times Paul said in the Bible, I wouldn't have you ignorant, brethren. I wouldn't have you ignorant. Because when you're ignorant, you're easily manipulated and taken advantage of. I mean, that's just the way it is. Society works just to keep you ignorant so that you can keep making bricks for empire. That's the way it works. I discovered something this morning I want to share with you. I'm trying to remember this author's name, Paul Brown maybe, but that sounds very, very generic for a guy like John Smith. Paul Brown, they're brothers, I guess. But he is a biblical historian and one of the best. And sometimes these books that you get, I wouldn't really recommend reading. I'm not saying don't read them, but they're hard reads, if you know what I'm saying. I'm reading a book right now on Galatians. I can't remember the lady that wrote it, but when it takes you 30 years of study to write the book just on Galatians, that poses a bunch of questions. But anyway, this guy, Paul Brown, we'll just go with that's his words. It'll come up in the study later on. You know, after Constantine made Christianity the state religion, so to speak, of the Roman Empire. Let me ask you this. Beforehand, who were mostly Christians made up of? Anybody? No? Well, I mean, there was a lot of Jews that became Christians, but who were mostly, let me say, a social class, who were the Christians? They were the poor. They were the poor folks. They were the outcasts. They were the, Yeah, I mean, they were the poor folks. So if you're looking at a society that is really based on class, and our society is really based on class, all societies of the world are based on class. You got the high uppers, and then you got we call them poor white trash. I call them the lepers of the society. You know, people don't want to be around lepers. And Jesus had them, and that's why even when Jesus went about healing the poor and, the sick and afflicted, they just didn't like that. So most of the Christians that Paul would go to, the people, the converts, were people that didn't have nothing else to lose. And really today, Christianity has become this popular thing. It becomes kind of mainstream, it's popular to be a Christian, which ought to tell you if it's popular to be a Christian, you're probably not a Christian in the biblical sense. Because it is not rah-rah and all this. To be a Christian is anti-establishment. It really and truly is, guys. It always was. It's anti-kingdom. It's anti-kingdom. When I say anti-kingdom, world kingdom. Okay, not God's kingdom. So, but today Christianity's mainstream. It's popular. All the preachers got the, pointy-toed shoes and the do haircuts, and it's, all popular, skinny jeans. Yeah, I ain't got pointy shoes. Them's Carhartts. I got work breeches on. I ain't got no pointy hair either. Yeah, I may have one. It was a cobweb. I thought I had a hair a few minutes ago, and it was a cobweb. The broom took care of it. Yeah. But anyway, around the 4th or 5th century, after Constantine had made Christianity the state religion, I want you to hear what I'm telling you here. Okay, then the rich people started coming to the church. Now, amazing, the rich folks started coming to the church. That is when the focus of the poor got changed. And guess what happened at that juncture? Everything then became about go to heaven when you die. Because when you go to heaven, you get big mansions and all that other stuff. Because if the focus was on the poor and you was rich and you came into the church, you're not going to be able to keep your status, right? Because now the church is going to be wanting me to give to the poor. And if I do that, Jeff, then I don't want this. Even though the Bible talks about every hill brought down and every valley raised. That goes here, don't it? Because we don't want that. But how many times did Paul say no Jew, no Greek, no bond, no Scythian, all that? Because he's like, look, in the kingdom, but see, we brought it into the church. And into the church you got popes and you got bishops and you got all of these hierarchies into the church, right? Those that are above the others. Same kind of scenario. But in the kingdom, it wasn't that way. So in the 4th or 5th century, when the rich people said, hey, we're coming into this church, what we need to do was get the focus off on helping the poor now. Let's just tell them they'll get big mansions when they go to heaven. I know you guys are looking at me dumbfounded like you don't believe me, but this is when it shifted. This is when it shifted. Now, if you'll go back and read Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, you will find the focus there was on the poor and not having any poor in their society. And I will say this, and we can kind of look at Sabbath a little bit. In our society, in American economy, and you think I'm picking on America, in all economies, the Romans, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Ottomans, you name it, the British Empire, the American Empire. What is the one thing that every economy does that causes their downfall? This one thing that's common to all of them. Anybody? Take a guess? Stab? 2 cents worth? Normally this is a conversation, but we have to get through the rough part first. Spit it out. It's called they inflate their money. That's what happened in Rome. That's why they went bankrupt. They inflate their money. They started cutting corners off, cutting corners off of their silver. And they started doing this because they got so big. So what do we do in the United States? You've heard this, turn on the money printer, right? But how is it in God's economy? How do you deal with debt in God's economy? Yeah, I mean, you have debt, but how is it dealt with? Year of Jubilee, that's on the right track. Debts are forgiven. Wow. Every seventh year, debts are forgiven, and every Jubilee, you get the land back. There was no 10-year car payments. That would be unheard of. I mean, that would be unlawful. But, I mean, in our society, we say, well, good, we're not under the law anymore, so now you can have a 10-year car payment. Right? You can have a 30-year loan. Well, I mean, this would be illegal in Jewish economy. And then plus you had the forgiveness of debts. But so I want you to understand something. When economies does not observe Sabbath, when economies do not observe these things, they crash. And they end up keeping them because I was thinking about this morning coming out, and a lot of people, they just don't think on these religious terms. Let's say that William, I always pick on William, because this is a good opportunity for me to pick on William. Yeah, it's the only chance I get because he's bigger than me now. I used to, I could pick on him for real because I was bigger, and then something happened. No, what it was. But let's just say, for example, William is real rich, and I owe William a large sum of money. I mean, I owe him $500,000, right? And I'm paying him $1 a week. Yeah, but I'm paying him $1 a week, and I'm never going to get him paid back, right? I mean, there's just not enough money to pay him back. Well, I owe this to William, but what happens when William dies? I'm free, right? I mean, honestly, I'm free. This is why we have murders and stuff, guys. I mean, honestly, in our society, people don't think about it. But if William dies, then I'm free, right? Yeah. Now think about this. I mean, now again, so in one sense, was Jesus the Son of God? Yes, everybody agrees. Was Jesus also called Emmanuel? What does Emmanuel mean? What? Now, somebody died on the cross. I'm just saying, somebody died on the cross. All debts forgiven. Now, I heard somebody this morning, I don't want to get away from this Sabbath thing because, like I said, I want you to become critical thinkers. I want you to think about this statement. And I heard it, and it was a thing. And guys, I'm not here to argue with you, but I am. So if you have something to say, just remember I'm right and you're wrong, but you're still free to voice your opinion. Right, Joe? Joe's with me. That's how I feel. Because it's a man's world. How's that song go? Yeah. But this guy says people need to get right with God. People need to get right with God. And I think in that statement, in that whole statement, as we have everything, which is what I hope to show in these studies, that we have gotten everything backwards. Because it's always about our doing something for God. And from the get-go of Scripture, it is telling us God is going to come and live with us. He says, I will tabernacle among men. Right? God says, I am coming where you are to live. Now, obviously, there's been a schism, so to speak. But I look at this verse, and I'm not going there today, but Paul writes, he that knew no sin, who knew no sin, Jesus, was made to be sin. In other words, he took in all of the violence of mankind that is telling God, we don't want you here, Denise. That's what we were saying to Emmanuel, Jesus. We don't want you here. You go back where you are, leave us alone. We were saying that, and what did we do to him? We beat him to a pulp, and we crucified him, and called him cursed of God. Hung him on a tree, called him cursed of God. Now, do you remember the threats that Jesus gave from the cross? I would have thought Jesus would have been saying, guys, I'm going to get y'all. When I come, this is it. This is it. He never, remember, he opened not his mouth. Peter would tell us he threatened not. He reviled not when he was reviled. He didn't do any of those things. As a matter of fact, he says, Father, forgive them, because why? They're ignorant. They don't know what they're doing. And so he did something, right? He did something. Paul would say he tore down the middle wall of petition. He reconciled us to God. So part of the gospel message is not, Teddy, you need to do something to get right with God. That's not the gospel, is it? The gospel is, Teddy, Jesus has already done something to make you right with God. Now live into it. Receive it. What is it? Yeah. So, do you understand? Now again, this, boy, oh boy, a lot of times I don't want to go here, but sometimes it just happens. Now this brings the krino, or the crisis, to Teddy. It brings the crisis to Teddy. Do you know what the Greek word for crisis is? Starts with a J. J-U-D. Judgment. So it immediately brings the judgment to Teddy, because now Teddy has a choice to make, doesn't he? He can live into this life, or he can continue in his bondage and slavery and darkness and ignorance. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, when it comes to Sabbath, this is not a word that we Christians use a lot. I'm just giving you my own self. And I look at things from a sense like, and I used to think this was crazy. I remember a long time ago we went down on the river. We was cleaning up for the 4th of July. This is many years ago when we first started. Ray and Jean was down there, my cousins, and their dad, Jerry, was Pentecostal on Sunday and drinking on Monday, but that's another story. But I remember Ray and Jean, because we were down there, we wasn't going to church at the time. We were just working. It's on Sunday, and they said, don't tell Dad, he'll whip us if he catches us working on Sunday. They used to think, well, that's crazy. Who does that? So then, you don't really know much about Sabbath or growing up. So then I didn't grow up in Advent. I grew up in Baptist. So we met out on Saturdays just to, I don't know why, observe the Jewish portion of Sabbath. But we would do our church work on Saturday, and then we would have Sunday. So we I kind of think we were like Hebrew people. We're going to do both just to cover ourselves. We're going to do Saturday and Sunday. But then I've met people along the way who on Sundays, they're like, well, you know what? I'm not going to mow the yard on Sunday because it's a rest day. And then you get, people split, right? Do we keep Sabbath? Do we not keep Sabbath? What is Sabbath? I heard people say, well, Jesus is my Sabbath. And I say, well, what the heck does it mean? What is Sabbath? Do we know anything about it, or have we done like we've done with every teaching in the Bible, made it a 5-word cliche, just a little phrase, and we don't know what Sabbath is? So I'm going to ask you guys before we begin, what are your thoughts on Sabbath?
I've never heard what Sabbath was. To me, I worship every day, so I don't.
Okay, so with that statement right there, Kathy, you are telling me that your ideal of Sabbath is worship.
To me, yes.
Okay. Now, this is what she's been taught, what she's kind of understood, that Sabbath is about worship. And I will ask anybody here, can you find that in the Bible anywhere? Where Sabbath and worship go together? I know. We see what I mean? So we just assume Sabbath is worship. But you remember we talked about worship. Okay, so anybody else? What is Sabbath to you? Rest. 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 Day of rest. Resting from. You labor all through the week. Day to recognize Him. See, Joe's a good Catholic. You guys, Joe's a good Catholic, man. I'm telling you. Joe's a good Catholic. Joe is going, what in the world? I'm not Catholic. You grew up Catholic. He's Christian. He knows I'm just speaking on him. Yeah. Now, but listen, a lot of time, hey, I got mine on right there. See, I got mine on, Joe. I'm becoming Catholic. See, a lot of times, like Joe growing up in the Catholic side of it, they will learn more about Sabbath than we will, because one thing that we've done as Baptists is we've thrown everything out the window. Because if a Catholic walks into church in that door, I guarantee you every Baptist around will use every other door. And they won't use the door the Catholics use just because the Catholics, because that's just the way Baptists are, I'm telling you. Yeah. Yeah. So your thoughts on Sabbath are rest and worship and, right? It's all. So Saturday, Sunday, any? What do you mean all?
To me, it's every day. To me,
I like every day when I don't have to work.
No, I mean,
I like it.
I've always thought that there was too much controversy because of the word Sabbath. So I'm surprised that I didn't study it more before now.
Mm-hmm.
But it never really meant anything to me, because there are people who go on Saturday, who go on Sunday, and come on, we're here on Wednesdays. It doesn't matter, and I don't think that we should ever hold one day more important than any other.
Okay, well that's a way to look at it. So again, when we're looking at Sabbath, you're looking at rest. We got rest. And then you're saying not one day more important than another day, and then worship. We've got all of these kind of ideas. Anybody else got any thoughts? Every day's the Lord's Day. You see a lot of what? Well, that's commandment number. Anybody know which commandment that is? Fourth commandment. Huh? You're not trying to learn to count that. So it's one of the commandments of God. So it's probably pretty important. So we call it the Lord's Day, rest, worship, all of these ideas that go in there. And one of the things I like about studies like this is we can go back and honestly, I think all of us always have to critically look at everything that we've been taught or believed. And if it stands, it stands. If it don't, it don't. But, you know, the hard thing is always looking at yourself thinking, well, I've believed this. Yeah, why? What if I was wrong? And, you know, the arrogance of man never admits that he's wrong or changes his ways. Well, we just adjust. Women do that. Yeah. So, somebody give me Matthew chapter 12. Let's just start looking at Sabbath. Matthew 12. And somebody can read verse 1 through 10. I know that's a lot of reading there. Matthew 12, 1 through 10. Now, wait a minute. Stop right there. So it's the Sabbath day. Now, the Holy Spirit wants us to really know this is the Sabbath day. And they are going through the corn, which is really the wheat. They're not picking peaches and cream corn. Getting some corn. They're hungry. They're going through the Sabbath day. And this is kind of going on. Now, does this remind you of any place else in the Scripture? Because I want you to understand, when you read these texts, these Pharisees, these Hebrew people, man, they knew the Scriptures. And they said, wait a minute. Not lawful to heal on the Sabbath. But we're going to find out if that's true or not. But I'm talking Jesus going through the corn on the Sabbath. Does that remind you of anything? Does that remind you of anything? That was going into the temple. Going into the temple. Huh? Let me see here. Going through the corn on the Sabbath. Well, there's a passage in Amos. We'll come back to this. This would have spurred a memory. This would have spurred a memory to them. Okay, so keep reading. I think we're on verse 3.
But he said unto them, have you not read what David did when he was in hunger, and they that were there with him, how he entered into the house of God and did eat showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but for only the priests? Or have you not read in the law how that on the Sabbath day the priest is the temple profaneth Sabbath and are blameless? But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if ye had not known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned them guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath.
Okay, stop right there a minute. Okay, so we got Jesus coming on the scene. Him and his disciples, they're going through the corn, right? They're getting the corn and they're eating the corn. And the disciples are saying it's not lawful to do this on the Sabbath. Jesus makes the argument, hey, you remember what David did? David not only, he went into the temple. David couldn't go in there because he was of the tribe of Judah. He goes in there and eats the showbread, which was only for the Levites. God didn't kill him. Okay? They eat the manna, and, that's what he's talking about here. But I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire compassion rather than sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. Wait a minute, who's innocent in this story? Who's the innocent one in this story? Jesus and the disciples. But they're bringing condemnation on him because he's going through the corn on the Sabbath day and he's eating the corn on the Sabbath day. Okay. Now, I just asked you a minute ago, does this remind you of anything else? Okay. Those that have the book of Joshua in your Bible, probably not everybody has the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua, chapter 5. What's significant here about Joshua chapter 5 is they have just been in the wilderness for 40 years. Okay? All the men of war have died. Everybody that was 20 years old and older, men of war, have died. So the guys that were 20 now have become 60. They've all died in the wilderness. So we got a whole new generation. Now they're looking at the promised land. It's right there, but they can't get to it. Why can't they get to the promised land? River Jordan. River Jordan is in a flood. Well, they didn't have no bridges, didn't have any boats. How are you going to get through that? So God tells Joshua, tell the priest, put your feet in the water. They got the ark. They put their feet in the water. The water stands up in a heap. It says all the way back to the city of Adam. And they walk through on dry ground. Right? But in the midst of that, God tells Joshua to tell the priest to get 12 stones out of the water. Take the 12 stones and set them up as a memorial. And then take 12 stones and take 12 different stones and put back in the water. Very significant. So when all of Israel came over to the far side, they set up the 12 stones. Now they are in the promised land. This is very significant, right? Now they are in the land that God promised them back down in Egypt. What did they do in Egypt? They made bricks. Did they worship in Egypt? They couldn't worship in Egypt. They were making bricks. Did they keep Sabbath in Egypt? No, because they were making bricks. They did nothing in Egypt but make bricks and die. That's all they did. Now God has brought them into the land. Now how did God sustain them in the wilderness? Water out of the rock, manna, quail. God kept them 40 years. Their shoes didn't wear out. Their ankles didn't swell. All of that, right? So now they're in the promised land. Joshua chapter 5, and God says, make sharp stones and circumcise the people. Why is that? Now, I know these are challenging questions, guys, but these are huge, huge ideas here. Why would he say, make sharp stones and circumcise the people? Now, again, these are arguments that you need to know. When I say arguments, you need to know this. Anybody got any ideas? Okay, so let's go back a little bit. When was a Jewish male circumcised? The eighth day. The eighth day. Okay, so on the eighth day, he was also given his name. Right? So now, William is not called William until the eighth day. He's just a baby boy. right? He has no name. He has no identity. So on the 8th day, we are going to constitute him as a son of Abraham, as a son of the covenant. How do we do that? Circumcision, which God said to Abraham, circumcise all the males in your house. So this meant you was a child of Abraham. You are a child of the covenant, and I'm going to give you a name. Right? On the 8th day, there was this guy born. He had a mom and dad named Zachariah and Elizabeth. And on the 8th day, when they circumcised him, they said, what's his name going to be? And she said, well, this, Zachariah and all this, and no. And finally, on the 8th day, which is the new day, John could speak forth and say, his name shall be John. Right? So the 8th day is significant because you are getting established in your identity as being a child of Abraham. Are you with me? You are part of the covenant. You are one of God's children. So this is very, very significant. And this place here that this happens is called Gilgal. Gilgal. Now, this was the place where Joshua led his expedition to conquer the land. His headquarters was Gilgal. Imagine that. His headquarters is where the people of God were reconstituted as the people of God because none of them were circumcised in the wilderness. Right? They were just wandering in the wilderness. So if you're going to come into God's promise, you better have the right name. I mean, you understand, it's like we talked about on Wednesday. When you come in to God's promise, God's inheritance, it is idea for you to be circumcised and know who you are, right? So Gilgal is this place. Now, you say, what does this have to do with Sabbath? What does this have to do with Sabbath? Well, I'm in Joshua chapter 5. I'm going to read verse 9. Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the shame, some of your Bibles may say the reproach of Egypt from you. So the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day. And while the sons of Israel camped at Gilgal, they celebrated the Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the month on the desert plains of Jericho. Then on that day after the Passover, on that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, the unleavened cakes and roasted grain, and the manna ceased on that day after they had eaten some of the produce of the land, so that the sons of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate some of the yield of the land of Canaan. So, remember, the question was, when did Jesus walk through the fields? Is this reminiscent? This is bringing them back to Joshua, walking through, and they are gathering the corn, so to speak, for the very first time in the new land. Why was that significant? And it says the manna ceased. Why was that significant? The manna had stopped. The reason was God has brought them into the land now, right? They are into the land of God's promise. They are in the promise. Okay? In the promise. And now they are eating the first fruits of that land. So Jesus is walking through, and they're like, don't pick the corn. The corn's for another day. Now Jesus is the Joshua, and Jesus is eating, and as a matter of fact, Jesus is the first fruits of the land. So Jesus is the Joshua walking through, eating the harvest of that day. In other words, they are in the land. They're in the promise. And this is the significance of what's going on. Now, they began to berate Jesus back in Matthew, like, you can't do that. You and your disciples, y'all can't eat of this land. This is the same thing today as you walking in your inheritance now. But the preacher's telling you, Denise, you can't do that. That's for over yonder. You're not supposed to have life now. You're not supposed to enjoy life today. You're not supposed to have, be filled with all this. You're supposed to wait and save that over there. Over there's when all the goodness is. This is just misery. But they're walking in it and they're eating it. So you see the significance. Now, the religious are always on the scene to say, oh no, oh no. I can remember a guy telling me one time, he said, brother, he said, if here's the way he put it, if God gave us all that joy now, we wouldn't want to leave earth. And I said, what are you talking about? Where does it ever say God wanted us to leave earth anyway? God has told us he's coming here. And I mean, he challenges us. Taste and see. Remember what he said? Taste and see that the Lord will get you. Oh, see, y'all know that verse. I thought it was taste and see that the Lord is going to get you. Taste and see that the Lord is good. So you can see what's going on here back in Matthew, right? In Matthew's gospel here. Okay, so Jesus makes his argument. I'm going to take over. Where am I reading at? Matthew 12. Are we in Matthew 12? Oh, yeah. Okay. And then he makes this statement, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So Jesus uses this word Sabbath. And right while he's got the argument going on, right? I mean, got all the Pharisees are looking, they're looking at the disciples. Jesus, they know Jesus is right here eating the corn. The last person they knew to do this was Joshua, and they're just like, who does he think he is? He's not Joshua, and that's for another day and all this. And then Jesus goes right from there and walks right into the synagogue, and there was a man there whose hand was withered. And they questioned Jesus, asking, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might bring charges against him. But he said to them, what man is there among you who has a sheep? If it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it, lift it out? How much more valuable then is a person than a sheep? So then it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and it was restored to normal like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him as to how they might destroy him. So what's your take on this? I mean, Jesus, he's eating, walks right into the synagogue, the big argument's going on. They are questioning him, should we heal on the Sabbath? He does it right, slap dab in their face. What's your take on that? Now again, keep in mind, you told me Sabbath was worship and all of these other things, but Jesus makes a point to not only eat corn on the Sabbath with his disciples, them knowing, because he had the same name, he was Yeshua, he was Joshua. He had the same name, and they're like, oh my God. Okay, so all of this is going on. And then right in front of their face, he restores a man. He restores a man. What's this? Obviously there's more going on than just healing a man on the Sabbath, because what crazy goon wouldn't want somebody to be restored, especially if he is of your own family? They were all Jews here. Only Jews in the synagogue, so this man might be your second cousin. Who wouldn't want their second cousin healed? There's got to be more going on here. And there was silence in heaven about the space.
About the space of heaven.
Huh?
Maybe
Okay.
We're supposed to follow after him. So if it's okay to do it that day, we should be doing the same thing
Okay.
every day.
See, I'm trying to get you guys in a shift of thinking here. How about somebody give me Amos chapter 8, verse 4 and 5. I'm just going to rock like, I'm just going to rock. Who was my piano player that did that? Ray Charles. Is it Charles or Charles? Ray Charles. Huh? It's both. Amos chapter 8, verse 4 and 5. Hear this. Isn't that a statement? Whenever you hear that, like, this means, listen up, dudes. Listen up. You need to hear this. It's very important. Go ahead. Okay, listen to that. This guy with the withered hand. This guy with the withered hand. Let me ask you this. How much Social Security would he have been drawing? Right here. No, I mean in Matthew 12. How much Social Security was he getting? What? He wouldn't have been getting no Social Security? How about how much WIC would he have been getting? No WIC. Anything? Food stamps? He would have been getting nothing. There you go, good Catholic Joe. Catholic Joe. Joe says I'm not Catholic. I'm taking it on. Okay, so this guy would have been what to society? This guy with the withered hand. He's a burden. He's a burden to his family. He's a burden to everybody. He's a burden. I mean, he's got a withered hand. He can't work. He can't do nothing. He's probably just going to be a bum. I mean, maybe we don't want to use that word, but I mean, what's he going to do? He can't plow with one hand. He can't reap with one hand. So she's reading out of Amos. Now go back again. Hear this, then take off from there. Who trample the needy. So in other words, what does that mean? That means we have established the classes and we have put the needy down here. Now what does the needy get? Whatever I got left. Maybe. I mean, if I got an old coat, I might give him the old holy coat I got. I'm not going to give him the good one, right? Because he's not equal to me. I've got two hands. He's what we call the needy. So you understand. So in the book of Amos, we've got a society that the prophet has to come on the scene, blowing the trumpet, ringing the bells, and saying, the big bony finger, hear this, you who trample the needy, right? You who don't treat the needy fair. My question to all of you guys is, who in our society is the needy? And I'm going to tell you this, guys. We've all been there, and I guarantee. That's how you say it in French. Guarantee. We all have families and friends. We got needy people all around us. And a great thing here is, hear ye this, you who trample on the needy. Keep going, Christy, please. And do away with the poor of the land. Keep going.
Saying, when will the new moon be over that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath be ended that we may market wheat? Skimping on the measure, boosting the price, and cheating with dishonest scales.
So what were they doing, guys? They were doing inflation. Now here the Sabbath is mentioned in there. Now they were going to keep Sabbath. But in their keeping of Sabbath, what was their mind?
It really wasn't on the Sabbath.
They were worried about the grain, but their whole day of Sabbath was, how much longer till I can get out there and take advantage of the poor? Because, I've got the scales rigged. I know how to mark it up. I can market the price. They're just sitting there thinking, God, I hate Sabbath. I can't make money on the Sabbath. How much longer till Sabbath is over till I can make some money? And how am I going to make money? I'm going to be taking advantage of the poor and the needy. Going to be taking advantage of them, right? So their whole mindset is, now here back in Matthew 12, Jesus right in their face heals a guy. And he says, look, if the sheep is in the ditch, would you not go in the ditch and get the sheep out? Right? In other words, you would bring the sheep back out of the place that it's fallen into, back into the equal ground. Right? So Jesus, what he's doing here is he's restoring a man who is down here, a poor and needy, on the Sabbath, which is a part of what Sabbath is about. And he's restoring this man back into his rights, into his inheritance as being a son of Abraham. Right? Are y'all with me? Agree, disagree? Yeah. We need more Catholics. We need more Catholics. So are you getting the picture here of Sabbath? This is just one example, because what we're doing, we're looking here and we're looking back. And then we're going to look back this way again at Sabbath and see. We won't obviously get all of this done today. So in Matthew's gospel, he heals a man with a withered hand. And he restores that man to be part of children of Abraham. So Mark's gospel, chapter 1, verse 21 through 28. Who's got that? I know you guys are sitting there just waiting on it. Mark chapter 1. So he goes into Capernaum. What's the first place he does? Goes into the synagogue. Why does he do that? It's Sabbath. And he goes in there to teach. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I don't think you're going to find where he ever goes into synagogue to worship. I'm just telling you guys that a whole lot of stuff that we've been told and given is not even in the Bible. So he goes into the Sabbath he goes into the synagogue on the Sabbath to do what? To teach. Okay, keep going back.
They were astonished at his teaching because, unlike the scribes, he was teaching them as one having authority. Just then, a man with an unclean spirit was in their synagogue, and he cried out, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus, Nazarene? Have you come to destroy us? I know you are the Holy One, the one of God." But Jesus rebuked him and said, "Be quiet and come out of him." And the unclean spirit convulsed him, shouted with a loud voice, and came out of him. And then they were all amazed, and so they began to argue with one another, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." News about him then spread throughout the entire vicinity of Galilee.
Okay. I mean, you see what happened. Jesus comes into the synagogue. He comes in there to teach, and lo and behold, what a great teaching opportunity. Now, they would meet out in the Sabbath for the teaching, and here's a man with an unclean spirit, and he challenged, "Who are you, Jesus? I mean, will you come here to destroy us?" Jesus says, "Come out of him." The man falls on the floor, and the spirit comes out of him. So this man with the unclean spirit, again, is restored in his covenant relationship, right? And immediately news of Jesus spreads throughout all Galilee, right? And he does this. The Holy Spirit wants us to know that Jesus did this on the Sabbath, right? Very important, isn't it? He wants us to know he did it on the Sabbath. Okay? So in Mark's Gospel chapter 3, that's the same as Matthew 12. He heals a man with the withered hand. Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6, verse 1. I'm going to read this. Jesus went out from there, came into his hometown, and his disciples followed him. Now, when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue. Again, what's he doing on the Sabbath? I'm looking at you because he's teaching. Always you're going to find that. I mean, honestly, you are. We get a whole... Okay. So he goes into the synagogue. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many listeners were astonished, saying, "Where did this man learn these things? And what is this wisdom that has been given to him, and such miracles as these performed by his hands? Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And are his sisters not here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not dishonored except in his hometown and among his own relatives and in his own household." And he could not do any miracle there except that he laid hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. And he was going around the villages teaching. Now, it's the Sabbath day. Jesus goes into the synagogue to teach. They're astonished at the words that he spoke. But is Jesus the Son of Man? Yeah? Is Jesus Son of God? Is Jesus Emmanuel? Then explain to me why he could do no mighty works there. I thought he could do anything.
Because they didn't know who he was. Yeah, because they didn't know who he was.
So would you say that, now this word is apipistos in the Greek. Api is the, like we would say, deserved or undeserved. The un negates the positive side of that. So api takes away. So pistos is the word faithful, faithfulness. So api means unfaithful. It's a long definition there. So because of their unfaithfulness, now imagine this. Just let this sink in. Jesus could do no mighty works there. Now just let that sink in a little bit. Because I know we think, well, Jesus, he's one of them. But it's right there in your Bible, in Mark's Gospel, chapter 6, that Jesus, Emmanuel, Son of Man, Son of God, could not do miracles in his hometown, and it wasn't his fault. Does that ever sink in with you? This kind of goes against our understanding here of who God is and all of these things, doesn't it? I'm just throwing this out there. Okay. Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13. We're in the synoptic Gospels. Luke chapter 13. Verse 10. Who's got that one? Luke chapter 13, verse 10. What? Say it again.
And he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath.
Wow. I'm just going to look at you every time. This every time.
That's okay. I still say worship.
Yeah. Next, just so y'all know, Derek, I'll pick on them on the first Sunday of the month. It's their group, the second. Then y'all got the third Sunday. So that's the way we do it. But Joe, we get Joe every week because he's the only Catholic in the whole bunch. I mean, he's a Christian Catholic. I mean, he's a Christian, but he grew up a Catholic. But anyway, so he's in the synagogue. He's teaching on the Sabbath. Okay, keep going. Maybe somebody got the vacuum cleaner. William, I think your heat pump is messed up. Yeah. Yeah. All right, keep going. This is something you said. Yeah. Keep going. Okay, so a woman here who has a spirit of infirmity, she's sick and she's been over for 18 years. Now, I'll just take over because it's hard to hear. And when Jesus saw her, now remember, what day of the week are we at? Sabbath. Okay. Jesus goes in, and guys, I want to tell you something here. How important this is. Maybe a lesson for you. Go home and look up every time Jesus saw someone. Jesus saw her. Just let that sink in. Jesus saw her. You know what? These children right here and everybody. You know what they'll do? They'll go and they'll do something and say, "Daddy, watch me. Mommy, watch me." Why? Because they want to be seen. And once they are seen, that changes everything. Right? Jesus sees a man, and that man was Matthew. That man sat at the receipt of customs. Now they saw a tax collector, but Jesus saw a man. Now they saw a woman on the Sabbath been over 18 years, but Jesus saw her. And every time he goes in to teach on the Sabbath, but he ends up healing somebody, right? He ends up, so Sabbath again here, going back to Joshua and going back, it's got something to do with who you are. Okay? So Jesus saw her. And what he did, he called her over and said to her, "Woman, one of these glad days, you'll be free from all your sickness." That ain't what he says, is it? He called her over there and he says, "Woman, you are freed from your sickness." Now, when was he talking about? He's talking about right now, right this moment. This Sabbath day, you are freed from your sickness, the sickness that has bent you over for 18 years. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she stood up straight again and began glorifying God. But the synagogue leader, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, began saying to the crowd in response, "There's 6 days during which work should be done, so come during them and get healed, and not on the Sabbath day." Now listen to this. He's not mad so much that the woman got healed, but he's saying, look, you could have came on Monday. You could have came Wednesday. And I mean, why are you doing this on the Sabbath? I mean, come on. We know we don't do this on the Sabbath. We don't restore on the Sabbath. Right? Because Jesus, he restores a man to health, his right mind. He cast out an unclean spirit. He restores a man with a withered hand. Right? He restores a woman who has been over. Let me keep on reading. But the Lord answered him, "You hypocrite. Does each of you on the Sabbath not untie his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it to water it? And this woman," now look, here we go back to covenant, "a daughter of Abraham," why would he have to say that? Why would he have to say that? "A daughter of Abraham as she is, whom Satan has bound for 18 long years, should she not have been released from restraint on this day?" What do you think about that? And there was silence in heaven about the space of 30 minutes.
That also should tell you something too about, he says she was bound for 18 years by Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. And that, like, when people have been sick that long,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes really gets to me because I think
So on these Sabbath, Jesus is setting people free. He's healing people, and he's teaching in the synagogue. Now, let me give you something else here to add along with this. Should she not be loosed from restraint on this day? And as he said this, all the people were being humiliated. And the entire crowd was rejoicing over all the glorious things done. Imagine that church service that morning. I mean, healing a woman, nose, and all this. And so he was saying, so Jesus didn't stop there, and he goes right into a parable. The kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God is like, and to what shall I compare it? It is like a mustard seed. Now again, see, we disassociate all of these things, but he's in there on the Sabbath, and he's healing a woman or restoring a woman. He calls her son or daughter, and then he gives the parable of the mustard seed. Here's a question. Are these things connected? Obviously, they're all connected. So how can we give the parable of the grain of mustard seed without it being connected to the woman bound 18 years by Satan, healed on the Sabbath? Do you understand here? Because right in the middle of this, Jesus, he wasn't a bipolar guy and just having a thought here and then a thought here and a schizophrenic over here, because that's kind of how we preach and teach. He's just adding layer on layer on layer and layer. So Jesus comes into the synagogue, he opens up the Bible, he begins to preach, and then he sees a woman. Oh my God, she's all hunched over. And he's kind of looking around like, my God, 18 years and you guys haven't done anything about this. By gollies, I will. And he sees the woman, he calls the woman over. He calls her daughter of Abraham, and he lays hands on her and heals her, and she straightens up, and my God, you know, and the regular crowd starts going, whoo, we've never seen nothing like this before. And the Pharisees, the leaders of the synagogue, that they're like going, hey, guys, hush, we shouldn't be doing this on the Sabbath. I mean, what are you doing? And Jesus is like, time out, buddy. Don't you guys take your own donkeys out and water them on the Sabbath day? I mean, come on, you do this, and shouldn't this daughter of Abraham, your sister, that you've done nothing for 18 years, be healed? And then right after that, he goes right into the parable of the mustard seed. Now, what do you guys get out of the parable of the mustard seed? What have you been taught about that? You've been taught a little bit of faith, right? So let's read it. And what is the kingdom of heaven like? And what shall I compare it? It's like a mustard seed, which a man took and threw it into his own garden. And it grew and became a tree. Remember the teaching, a mustard seed doesn't grow into a tree. It doesn't grow into a tree. So already Jesus is like, wait, and all the people would have been like, time out. Mustard don't grow into trees, Jeff. Again, Jesus has lost his mind. I mean, if I gave William some acorns and I said, William, go plant these acorns and they'll grow into a big bush, William would think you're crazy. These are acorns that grow into trees. At the same time, if I gave him some mustard seeds and I said, these are growing into a big tree, William would think you're crazy. These are bushes. So it's different. So he goes out and he tells them this. And the birds of the sky nested in its branches. What in the world are you talking about? And again, to what shall I compare the kingdom of God? It's like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour until the whole leaven was. Remember, if you guys remember the thing about the mustard seed is, I'll just give you this part of it. The mustard seeds, they were very aggressive. So if I planted mustard here, you know, I got my garden over here and I planted it right here. Before I knew it, I had mustard over here, mustard over here, mustard over here. It's in other words, just like the 3 meals of leaven, it has began to take over. So Jesus is talking about the kingdom. He comes in, all of his teaching is on the kingdom. And the kingdom, and see, they don't know what to do with the kingdom, because in their synagogue, guys, they knew where the poor people sat. They sit over there. The unclean people sat over there. The rich people sat over here. The smelly people sat over here. And the smell good people sat over here. We know it's been this way for a long time. Jesus is coming in and he's wrecking it. He's turning it all upside down. You remember back in Amos, hear this, you people who trample the needy and the poor. Hear this. And Jesus is coming on the scene, and he's giving them a warning with this parable of the mustard seed. I know you're taught faith, 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 and all this faith, but let me tell you what this is, what he's telling them. He's telling them because of God's faithfulness, not yours. Don't ever think it's your faithfulness, because you ain't got it. He is faithful. Because of his faithfulness, his kingdom is coming and is even here now. Look at this daughter of Abraham who's been bound over 18 years. And look at her now. What are you going to do with that? And that's just tip of the iceberg. It's coming. Your own prophet Isaiah said the glory of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And the thing is, he's warning them, you can either get on board with this or you'll be crushed by it. Remember Jesus said to them, those that fall on the stone will be broken. But those to whom the stone falls on will be ground to pieces. Remember that? So he's telling them, he's warning them of this thing. Now, again, all of this done on Sabbath. All of this, again, in Luke 14, he heals a man with a dropsy on the Sabbath. Dad always says he has a dropsy. He can work a little bit and he's got to drop down and rest. John chapter 5, he heals the man at the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath. And the list goes on and on. And let me give you John chapter 9. Jesus makes clay, puts on the man's eyes, and the man can see. He does all this on the Sabbath. Why does Jesus keep doing all of this on the Sabbath? Somebody give me Numbers chapter 13, or Numbers chapter 15, 32 to 36. Okay, you guys got that? They were in the wilderness, which means they haven't came into the promised land. They've left Egypt. They're in the wilderness. And they find a man gathering sticks on what day? On the Sabbath day. A man's gathering sticks. Okay, keep going.
Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the entire community. They placed him in custody because it had not been decided what should be done to him.
Okay, so this guy is gathering sticks. They don't know what to do with him. They bring him to Moses there, and the whole congregation, they don't know what to do with him. Anybody, before we go on, know what happens to this guy? Huh? They stoned him to death. Now, and I know you can sit there and say, whoa, thank God we're not under the law anymore. We're not under the law. We'll talk about how these phrases go. But do you think when somebody is stoned to death for picking up sticks on the Sabbath, do you think maybe the Holy Spirit says, maybe I want you guys to pay attention to Sabbath? That it is very, very, very important. And I want you guys to get it. It's vital to understand Sabbath. Now again, we're over here in our Christian community, and we don't really know what Sabbath is, right? But I'm telling you, in those days, the guy got killed because he was picking up some sticks on the Sabbath. So again, as we get ready to close out here, I'm going to give you a couple more verses. Acts chapter 13, verse 14. I'll just tell you this. They gathered in the synagogue. This is the apostles. And guess what they did? On the Sabbath. They gathered in the synagogues. Guess what they did? I'm looking at you. They gathered in the synagogue and they read scripture and taught. That's what they did every time. And you just get over and over and over and over and over. You just gathered in the synagogue and they taught over and over and over. Okay. Last verse. Somebody find 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 21. And before we read that one, somebody give me Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Those will be our last two verses. Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. So while somebody's getting those verses, what are you guys' thoughts on Sabbath? Remember, it's commandment number 4, fourth commandment. And you may say, well, heck, throw the law out. We're not under the law. Who cares what commandment it is? Do we keep commandment? Do we not keep commandment? I mean, do we keep Sabbath? Do we not keep Sabbath? What is Sabbath? Is it important? All I know is I read in Numbers, this guy picked up some sticks and he got his head bashed open for doing it on the orders of God Almighty. So I would say God is calling a high attention to Sabbath. So before we read those verses, any thoughts on Sabbath?
I still think it should have the same respect, but I don't think that it is one specific day. I still think and will always think that every day can be treated like the Sabbath.
Okay.
Whenever anybody chooses. And when I say worship, I don't mean like we come in here and do that. Worship to me is whatever I do. I'll go home today and make spaghetti sauce. To me, I can stand there and do whatever I want in the house.
We're going to have to take you back to the worship lesson on.
No, but to me, worship is anything that you do, and it's done with the right. I can't even say spirit because I don't know what everybody else feels or thinks. But for me, just about everything I do is in some form worship. Otherwise, there would be probably a lot of people around me who wouldn't exist anymore. But what I'm saying is, you have to, if you live the way that we're taught to live, it's a matter of what you do, not saying perfection, knows. But I mean, everything that we do should be in some form, not should be, is connected to Christ himself.
Okay.
It's just, that's worship to me.
Anybody else thoughts on Sabbath before we read these last two verses?
That everything be done decently and in order.
Sabbath. And I bet you guys don't have many questions on Sabbath because you never thought about Sabbath.
Me, I always thought about, like, in Genesis, it said he looked at his creation, it was good, and on the seventh day he rested. So, I looked at it as a day of reflection. That way you could.
Well, that's a good question, and I'll just add this to it. If they rested on the Sabbath, there is no question about it that Sabbath is Saturday. Then why don't we keep Sabbath? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not trying to argue. I'm just throwing it out there. Why don't we keep Sabbath?
It seemed like it converted, people started observing Sunday because, I guess, like with crucifixion. Because, they gave him down on Friday before the Sabbath started at 6. Then he rose on Sunday morning. So as Christians, I think a lot of people converted that to, hey, we need to be, thinking about our religious side of it on Sunday instead of Sabbath, and that there's no text that says that, hey, we're supposed to do that. People just kind of got in their head, and it's like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
There is there is one that goes on. Is that Seventh-day Adventist?
Uh-huh.
They go on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
That's the day that they observe.
Yeah. Okay. Again, the Sabbath, guys, I'm hoping in my mind that I'm stirring up some questions here with you, because that's my whole goal. If you ain't got no questions, if you ain't got something going on in your brain, hey, what about this? What about this? Then we're not getting anywhere, because remember, the Holy Spirit told us to put in the Bible. This guy picks up some sticks on the Sabbath, and God tells him to kill him. And Jesus heals on the Sabbath, and they want to kill him. So this Sabbath, God says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Right? It's the longest commandment, I know, short, but he gives all these instructions coming on with Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Now we come over, we don't know if it's Saturday, we don't know if it's Sunday, we don't know if we're supposed to mow the grass, or we don't know what the heck we're supposed to do, because we don't even have no idea what Sabbath is.
Are we not keeping all the other days holy though?
What do you mean keeping them holy?
Well, when it's like, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we supposed to keep all days holy?
Well, that's a good question, and the thing here I want to tell you as you develop your arguments. Bring the Bible verses, right? Because, well, just for that reason, because there are so much that we've been taught that is not even in the Bible. It's just tradition, it's just hearsay, and it's just boom. And I'm not trying to be argumentative on the one sense. I'm trying to bring us into a place of not being ignorant because of the Sabbath. So who has got Colossians 2:16?
Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath day.
Okay, so what's that verse telling you right there? I mean, how do you read that verse?
It says, let no one tell you.
No, read it again.
Let no man therefore judge you.
Oh, judge. Okay, same thing.
Let no man judge you in what?
Meat, drink, holy day, new moon, Sabbath days.
Okay, so let no man judge you in meats or drinks, new moons or Sabbath. What does that mean to you?
Kind of leans towards do what's on your heart. What God lays on you.
Well, again, Paul specifically says, don't let men judge you in meat or drinks. What's he referring to? He's talking about the kosher meats, of what meats you can eat. Okay? And then he says of new moons. And then he says holy days and Sabbath. Okay? So what's he telling us here? What's Paul? Paul is writing to this Colossian mixed congregation of Jews and Gentiles.
Let no man judge you. If you feel like, kind of like the healing, you do it or you don't do it. But you shouldn't be judged either way.
Anybody? See, we've always kind of been taught that Paul was saying, guys, don't keep Sabbath. He didn't say that. I'm looking at all these commentaries, and they're not saying that. Paul says, don't let nobody judge you in it. Okay? In the kosher meats and the holy days. And I mean, I'm reading these commentaries, and I'm like, Bible scholars. Okay? So, Here we go back to the scholar. Now, who's got the 2nd Chronicles? Remember, 2nd Chronicles would have been the last book in the Hebrew Bible. 2nd Chronicles 36:21.
This fulfilled the word of the Lord through Jeremiah, and the land enjoyed its Sabbath rest all the days of the desolation until 70 years were fulfilled.
So all the land enjoyed the Sabbath rest. So Jeremiah is a book where they went into captivity. Why did they go into captivity? Yeah, but they didn't keep Sabbath. I mean, he's telling you right there, they did not keep Sabbath, and the whole nation went into captivity. Because God says the land is going to keep Sabbath. So in what we've heard today, tell me some things you learned of what Sabbath is. Huh? You didn't know there was going to be a test, did you?
I said, are we going there again?
Yeah. So they did not keep Sabbath, and the whole land, the whole people's gone into captivity. So how important is it to keep Sabbath? And what is keeping Sabbath? Do what? Well, again, one of the things I'm trying to work on myself is develop the language to where you don't think individual. They didn't think individual. They thought in community. They wouldn't say me. They would say us. And the way community was, if William was sick, we are all sick. Right? So if William was down and out, the whole community stops until we restore William back into his place in the community. Right? That was how it was supposed to be. That's why Jesus saw the woman. Said, oh my God, what are y'all doing? I mean, look, have you not saw this woman? So obviously she's been in your midst for 18 years and y'all have done nothing to restore her back to community. So Sabbath, in one sense, is going to be about this restoration of equality among the people, right? I mean, that's my take. Anybody else? Huh?
That's actually exactly what it is, because he's like, you've seen other things like that in your life where you go, why hasn't anybody done anything?
Uh-huh.
It may not be the woman bent over or whatever, but you've seen that yourself. I have. Probably everybody has. Seen something out of order where you think, why did nobody do anything?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so you can see this Sabbath, and then people don't like this because they like the order the way things are. And that's the order of empire, because the order of empire is we've got classes. And then the other thing that we've seen on Sabbath and rest is what? Forgiveness of debts. Remember, we started this whole conversation out with how did all these empires fall, including the Jewish people. How did they fall? You read it in Amos. Hear this, you people who take advantage of the needy and the poor. And guys, it was like 27 years after the prophet Amos that they go into captivity, and they didn't rise again. I mean, God was warning them. And part of Sabbath was, one part of the Sabbath is letting the land rest. We read that right there. So you plant your garden for 6 years. On the 7th year, you let the ground rest. And in the 6th year, he promises you enough harvest to get you through the 7th year till you get back into the other year. But see, we don't believe that because we need to throw the fertilizer and throw the everything and grow as much as we can and much as we can so that we can make as much money as we can, right? Isn't that how all the food you're going to get at your stores is made? As we close this out, William mentioned something to me the other day. William told me he had heard, don't drink water out of plastic bottles. Why is that? The plastic particles. Okay, the plastic particles. Has anybody heard, don't put styrofoam in the microwave and heat your stuff up on that? You guys have heard that. Okay, any other things that you've heard about that? Any other things?
I haven't heard not drink the water, but not if it gets really hot or something.
Okay, so they're saying you get plastics from it. Okay. The reason I mention this again is we have probably the most sick people in the United States that's ever dawned the face of the earth. We probably got more cancer. It's supposed to have the best doctors. We got more miscarriages. We got everything going on in this world, in the United States. Now, when is the last time the United States kept Sabbath and said, we're not going to plant nothing this year? Why? Because exactly what she read in Amos. Right? Because we can make too much money. There's too much money at stake here. I can't trust God. Now, Jesus told him the parable of the mustard seed, and you told me it was about faith, but yet Jesus heals them and says, you guys don't trust me. You guys are trusting your dollars. Now, let me tell you something else, and we talked about this last week, and Derek and I talked about this the other day about walking barefooted outside. And for the first time in 30 years, I'm sleeping all night long. Just walking barefoot. Tracy tells me I'm crazy. But for the first time in 30 years, I'm sleeping all night long from going outside walking barefooted. And let me tell you something else he says in the law. He says, don't mix. Yeah, you weren't here. He says, don't mix linen and wool and all that other stuff. Let me tell you something else I've discovered. Do you know that half of our clothes are filled with those very plastics that you're talking about? And they go into our bodies. Now, you guys, I know you're sitting there looking at me like I'm crazy. But I'm telling you, all of these things for health and life and vigorous and stopping miscarriages and all of that stuff is found right in Leviticus and Exodus. If only we could see it and adhere to it. Most of our stomach problems, our anxiety, our hips, our arthritis, our failing to see is all because we don't listen and we don't keep Sabbath. Now, I'm telling you, you can continue to do the things that you want to do. But when you begin to learn a little bit about keeping Sabbath and observing some of these things God has given us to do, there's be a whole lot of changes in how you feel. And I can tell you what, you can deal with the world a whole lot better when you feel good, when you know Jesus sees you, and your taste buds begin to change. You desire to eat the fruit of the land. You desire to eat good stuff instead of junky stuff, because 99% of everything we put in our body is toxic and poison. And we go to the church and 99% of what we put in our spiritual life is toxic and poison. And we wonder why she's been bent over for 18 years and nobody's done anything about it.
By the way, those good things that you're talking about eating that we replace, the good things are not so good in the grocery store anymore either. None of it. None of it.
Brother Jim,
Yes, ma'am.
we are what we eat.
Exactly.
You know, I was raised on a farm, and we ate basically everything we grew.
Yeah.
What's wrong with our society is
That's what Tracy calls me. Health nut.
I don't try to eat. I don't eat. Sugar is, cancer feeds on sugar.
Sugar is what's killing America. Sugar and white flour.
Just the additives they put into our food. Because when we were growing up, we had things that we grew on the farm. We had cows, chicken, and everything. But now you go to the store for everything, and it's everything. Put stuff in there to keep it preserved for years. Well, you know that can't be good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God, and you know, people don't understand that God speaks of the herbs in the Bible. People don't realize there's a lot of things you can do in the natural, like herbs and things, the teas that you can do rather than pop these pills at the doctor. Because the pharmaceuticals getting rich. Because they are popping these pills, got a pill for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look the side effects, I always told Jack before he died, I said, honey, I would Google everything he take. And I said, honey, I don't know whether you should take this or not. I said, the side effects don't kill you. It can't be good for you.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize that. I Google everything. I mean, I'm very conscious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, Donna. And, we all need that more and more and more. Because we eat junk. And, I mean, just everything is junk. The clothes we wear. Huh? Yeah. And it's all about making money. And that's exactly what you read in Amos. It was about money, 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 money. So,
If you watch the side effects of any medicine on TV, commercial, my goodness, the side effects have you dead.
Yeah, they tell you
They're
this
this
for
long.
different, like different
good
things.
properties are
And I
this
sit there and I thought, my God, the side effects of me this.
worse than
I
will
thought, my
kill you.
God, the side effects is worse than what you got.
Many of them say you can die
yeah.
on the side effects. It's
Yeah.
not like,
I'm going to say this, guys, and then this is it. Remember that guy in Numbers gets picking up a few sticks, and God tells him to stone him. This is how important keeping of Sabbath is, because the one portion of keeping Sabbath is in absolute defiance of not participating in the world. Right? Because everything about the world, whatever economy you're a part of, is about making money. And it's about making money, taking advantage. You take advantage so that you can make money. And to God's people, He says, you are going to set aside to where you are not. And it was so important to God when somebody was picking up sticks. In other words, what that guy was doing is he was thinking, how can I make a little money today? How can I get ahead today? How can I plan for tomorrow? Because God is telling us, no, you are going to learn to trust me. And I will provide. So early on, God says, that guy ain't trusting me. Because I want people, yeah, you like it. I want people who trust me. And when He came on the scene on the Sabbath day, He found the people who wasn't trusting Him. So a Sabbath is this call back for us to give up everything and to trust Him. Now that's lesson one, and we got more to go.